support.
The maestro, please.
Last pop analysis of 2020, and we're gonna end it strong. Today we'll be looking at Therefore I Am by Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish. We first mentioned Billie Eilish last year when we were talking about
I'm the bad guy. Duh.
Been quite busy since then, considering she dominated the Grammys, did the new James Bond song, and even had some time to release some more chill music coming off of her last album. Background. Therefore I Am was originally released on November 12th of this year. It then charted the very next week at number 94. And then the following week went all the way to number 2, where it currently is. Like most of her music, she is joined by her brother, Phineas. We also talked about Phineas when we did Bad Guy, but since then, the scope of his work has expanded beyond just the music of his sisters, some highlights being,
But if the world was ending, you come over, right? You come over and you say the night.
and
Last night was the last night of my past life. Got me here like you can never figure me out.
Therefore I Am is released both by Darkroom and Interscope. Form. Therefore I Am is a pop song, sometimes listed as a dark pop song, is just under 3 minutes long, 4/4 time, D minor, and 94 beats per minute. After the short drum beat intro, we get the first chorus,
I'm not your friend or anything, damn.
followed by the first verse.
Stop. What the hell are you talking about?
We then get a very quick pre-chorus,
So go have fun. I really couldn't care less, and you can give it my best, but just know.
before going into our second chorus.
You think that you're the man. I think therefore I am.
We then get our second verse,
Articles, rather you remain unremarkable.
another short pre-chorus,
Did you have fun? I really couldn't care less, and you couldn't give it my best, but just know.
the third chorus,
I'm not your friend or anything, damn.
a bridge,
I'm sorry.
and then the final chorus,
You think that you're the man. I think therefore I am.
which ultimately ends the song.
I think therefore I am.
Bass synth. The bass synth outlines the basic harmonies that exist throughout the entire song, the first 2 bars implying D minor, and the second 2 bars implying A major. The only other figure the bass synth ever does is much later in the song. It actually plays an octave lower and just goes back and forth on syncopated rhythms in octaves. Again, the first 2 bars D, the second 2 bars A. Rough synth. The much harder sounding rough synth reinforces the bass synth during the chorus, first going back and forth between D and F before going back and forth between A's an octave apart. Chords. These filtered chords actually play along the rough synth during the chorus, again outlining those same chords that the bass synth did originally, doing a D minor over A for 2 bars, and then just a root position A major chord for 2 bars. Mid-synth. The most melodic synth of the bunch, and you really only can hear it clearly during the bridge. The first 2 bars have it going up and down between D and B, and the second 2 bars have it going up and down between A's in octaves. Very similar to the bass synth in that it outlines the 2 chords of the song, D minor and A major. The mid-synth synth continues into the final chorus, but becomes much more simplified. Its range also narrows, now only going from that low C sharp to the A above it. As we continue on, it then starts to do even more repeated notes, becoming even more simplistic. Also, it ends at the third bar because that's where the song ends. High synth. The first time we hear the high synth, it actually only plays a very basic outline of what it will do later in the song, simply doing a repeated A, then going up to a B flat, minus the 1 G at the very end. Later in the song, we get the high synth's full part. It first goes back and forth between A and the occasional B flat, before dropping to G, working its way back up to that B flat, and then hitting the A again and ending on a B flat for the first half. The second half of the high synth part starts off the same, but then begins to introduce a G sharp, adding to its melodic complexity, before finally ending on a G natural. Chorus. Billie Eilish's main line during the chorus stays very low in her range, and it's actually quite a narrow one, only going from C to the A immediately below it. That being said, she does keep doing drop-offs off of those A's.
I'm not your friend or anything, damn. You think that you're the man, I think therefore I am.
There are actually two things added to the chorus later on, one of which is simply the exact same line, digitally altered to be many octaves lower, and one additional line above, almost a tenth consistently above it, and there's some nice contrary motion as well.
I'm not your friend or anything, damn. You think that you're the man, I think therefore I am.
We don't actually get a distinct line in the chorus until the last one, which is simply Billie Eilish doing ad-libs over all of her layered vocals.
I'm not your friend or anything, damn. You think that you're the man, I think therefore I am.
The ad-libs vocals have melodic lines that are much more distinct when compared to the normal ones, but that could be because she has some auto-tune applied to her on those ad-libs.
I'm not your friend or anything, damn. You think that you're the man, I think therefore I am.
Verse. Billie Eilish opens her very first verse doing what is essentially rapping, using syncopated 16th note rhythms.
Stop. What the hell are you talking about? Get my pretty name out of your mouth. We are not the same with or without.
It's not until the second half of her first verse that she actually starts singing in octaves with herself for the most part. She deviates that to give us some lovely harmonies on Know How I Feel.
Don't talk about me like how you might know how I feel. Top of the world, but your world isn't real. It was an idea.
The second verse does still have that idea of syncopation, but she is very much at the bottom of her range, starting at that low A and going all the way down to that F, given she does have an additional line herself an octave above in the back half of this phrase.
I don't want press to put your name next to mine. We're on different lines, so I wanna be nice enough. They don't call my bluff, cause I hate to find.
In the second half of her second verse, she is over herself in, I guess, octaves, but we really only get a distinct note at the very beginning as she just starts to pitch downward, hence all of the X's that you see.
Articles, 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 rather you remain unremarkable. Got a lot of interviews, when they say your name, I just echo you.
Pre-chorus. The very short pre-chorus does have her start off on that low A, but it quickly devolves into just kind of talking, given there is still kind of this melodic motion downward.
So go have fun, I I really couldn't care less, and you can give it my best, but just know.
The second time it comes around, however, she is essentially just talking.
Did you have fun? I really couldn't care less, and you can give it my best, but just know.
Bridge. The bridge does have her singing and then that digitally altered many octave lower layer beneath it, and it is in the bridge that she actually hits the lowest note in the song, or at least the lowest note that has a distinct pitch, hitting that E way below the staff.
I'm sorry. I don't think I caught your name.
The second half of the bridge, she essentially repeats that, but has a lovely, very low melisma on name.
I'm sorry. I don't think I caught your name.
Billie Eilish has really kept up the momentum with her music, especially coming off of her essentially dominating the Grammys earlier this year. Of course, with all that time in the spotlight, you're gonna have a lot of eyes on you, and not all of them are gonna be nice. Which is kind of what inspired this song, speaking of her haters. Speaking of which, for those of you who might have some more harsh words for Billie Eilish, honestly, she probably
Couldn't care less, and you can give it my best, but just know. I'm not your friend or anything, damn. You think that you're the man. I think therefore I am.
Cogito ergo sum is a Latin philosophical statement that, when translated to English, means I think, therefore I am. This statement comes from 17th century French philosopher René Descartes. Descartes' statement is a fundamental element in Western philosophy, as it gives a certain foundation for knowledge in the face of radical doubt. Never thought you were going to get a philosophy lesson here, did ya?
I'm not your friend.